Welcome to Who Wrote That Up For You, a daily podcast that shines a light on the American justice system and its role in empowering the powerful to take from you. The justice system is the only branch of your government where an individual, rather than the collective, can make the system act for you. It puts power in the individual's hands, but it's broken and being used against you at a time when you need it most.
Welcome to Who Wrote That Up For You. I am Sonia Ebron, a co-founder at Courtroom 5.
And I am Deborah Sloan, the other co-founder at Courtroom 5.
Delightful show lined up for you today. In a few moments, we will speak with Lara Amoroso. She is the founder of Doing It Differently Divorce, a mediation service and serving all the counties in Florida. And so we'll be delighted to learn some of what happens in mediation there. Before we get there, though, Deborah, what's on your mind today?
I want to talk about the Texas Bankruptcy Court. A Texas Bankruptcy Court issued an order, amongst other courts, by the way, issued an order related to AI-generated filings. As you will recall, a few weeks ago, a lawyer got into a little trouble because he generated some filing. He generated some citations from ChatGPT. So now, in a lot of courts already, even after a couple of weeks, they want any, if you're using any portion of a pleading or a paper filed in court or into the court's docket or anything being drafted that's using ChatGPT or Harvey AI or Google Bard or any of those AI generated textual software, they want to require all the attorneys and pro se litigants, that's us, to verify that the information that, first of all, that it was generated from GPT or from AI. And not only do you have to verify that it was generated from a GPT, but that it's been double checked for accuracy, that it's been that you've used traditional legal databases to check your citations and basically what the court has said. And if you fail to do that, then you're up for sanctions. I think given what's already happened, that this sounds like a good bit of guidance from the courts. I mean, they moved really, and courts don't move that fast, but they moved really, really fast on this one. So I think it's a good thing.
It's absolutely a good thing. As I said, when that news about the lawyer who has been sanctioned, his firm was sanctioned for that behavior, the error wasn't using ChatGPT or AI. I mean, that's going to happen, right? Yeah. Anytime, particularly given the buzz around this new technology and its power. It's very powerful technology, but it hallucinates. It makes things up. Everybody knows that. And the failure is when he got a motion to show cause, he got called out for it. In other words, he went and asked GPT essentially to create the cases that he had cited. That was the real error. He doubled down on it. Okay. Yeah. And so he was rightfully sanctioned for that. Hopefully we don't have to remind lawyers in general not to do that kind of thing. That's but I'm glad to see courts being proactive about letting lawyers know and everybody know what can happen if you engage in that kind of nonsense. So that's a very interesting story. Well, at Courtroom 5, we believe the courts belong to the people, in particular to the people who use them. And we, the people, are coming to claim our courts. And so if you are in court without a lawyer, or if you need to sue someone and can't find a lawyer to represent you, get yourself over to courtroom5.com and give us a try today. We hope to provide some relief for you there. At this time, it is my pleasure to welcome onto the show Lara Amoroso, the founder of Doing It Differently Divorce, a mediation service in Florida. Lara, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Tell us about how you got interested in divorce mediation, how you got to this space.
My interest in conflict resolution goes back many, many years, but I took a different path in terms of careers. And but through my own experiences with the family courts, I realized that even for those of us who consider ourselves to be intelligent beings, the courts can be very complex to navigate on your own. They're expensive when you hire an attorney, and you you don't always get what you want. So that's really, how this started, was the idea that you can end up in a much better place with mediation rather than litigation, particularly in the case of family matters. And I expand that because we are doing it differently, divorce, but we can also mediate other family issues. So, to my way of thinking, our system of justice is not necessarily the best place for family matters, because family matters are just that. Um, they they're best resolved by families because families know what's best for them. A judge knows the law, but with mediation, the beauty is that the parties are not constrained for the most part by the law. They can be creative and they can come up with a solution that works well for them. And I really want to emphasize that, particularly in the case of a divorce that includes minor children, this is still a family unit. They're just restructuring their family. So when you litigate a divorce, it's expensive. The average cost of a divorce with children in Florida, I think in 2020, was over $20,000. Because so divorce is the legal dissolution of a marriage, right? It's not necessarily a conflict. It's an agreement to end a marriage, to dissolve it. But when you place it in our adversarial system of justice, sometimes conflicts even arise where there weren't any, because you have two opposing parties represented by attorneys, who those attorneys are going to take a position for their client. They're going to dig their heels in and they're going to spar over it. And it's a big tug of war and it becomes a battle and nobody wins but the attorneys. So, and I know I'm talking a lot here, but there's so much to say about this. If you back the truck up, and most people want to jump and hire an attorney, immediately to file for divorce. But if you've come to the decision that you're moving forward with a divorce, a pre-suit pro se divorce can work wonders. So pre-suit means you haven't filed in court yet. Pro se, of course, means that you're representing yourself. And divorce mediation is working with a mediator who's a neutral third party who will work to facilitate communication and negotiations between the parties to resolve those issues so that they can then file everything all at once in an uncontested, easy peasy divorce.
Got it.
That
Got
makes
it. There's
sense?
absolutely a lot to unpack there. So let's take it piece by piece. And so I know in Florida, like you can't just walk into folks can't come to your office and say, "Hey, I like you. You're my next door neighbor," or what have you. Can you mediate our divorce? Are there some certifications required to be a divorce mediator in Florida?
Yes. I am a Florida Supreme Court certified family mediator. And so I can work with those cases that have gone through the courts. And technically, you don't need to be certified to mediate in Florida, but to mediate for the courts, you do. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
But
and so sometimes folks will voluntarily, before they get into court, find a mediator and work these things out relatively amicably. And so you wouldn't need to be certified in those circumstances, I guess. But if you are in court, and the court says, "Hey, you guys need to mediate this, right, rather than litigate," then they would look to a certified mediator. Is that right?
yes, a Florida Supreme Court certified family mediator. There are different areas for certification. I'm certified in family, county court matters, and also circuit civil.
Got it. Got it. I agree with you absolutely that the traditional litigation process is the absolute worst way to resolve any kind of family issue, a divorce, a number of others that we'll talk about in a moment. You remind me, though, of the biblical story of King Solomon, right? Splitting the baby, I think it is. If I'm not mixing my mixing my biblical stories there, I apologize. But that's oftentimes, I think, what happens when you have to litigate these family issues, is that neither side ends up with what they want. And so I love the idea. I love the potential for mediating these kinds of disputes. Besides divorce, what are some of the other types of family issues that you run into that might benefit from mediation?
So like just unmarried parents need to come up with a parenting plan. After the fact, sometimes when nobody gets what they want in a divorce, they end up back in court again. So like issues with alimony, child support. There can be other family matters like elder care issues, adult children fighting over what to do, about mom. She has dementia, or, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so do you see most of your clients coming from the courts? In other words, court-ordered mediation, or do they come voluntarily?
Most of our clients are coming before. They're the pre-suit pro se clients, because that's really what we're designed for. So I can certainly, and I'm happy to mediate a case that is being litigated, because all cases in Florida, in every jurisdiction, will be referred to mediation. It's a requirement before going to trial. So that's kind of like the money's been spent. It's the 11th hour, and we need to come up with something quick because we don't have the money to go to trial, or we don't want the judge to impose their decision on us. But that's not ideal, because at that point, people are spent. There's emotional damage done. There's financial damage done. And those can be, that can be really difficult to recover from. I like to say that doing it differently divorce, it's a kinder, gentler divorce that won't break the bank. So
20,000 is a lot. 20,000 is certainly a lot to spend on litigating a case that's ultimately going to be resolved at the end of the day by mediation. So you're absolutely right there. What is the experience for folks that are in the litigation process, right? They've hired a lawyer, or maybe not hired a lawyer, and trying to do it themselves. What do you hear from people who've had to go through that experience about the challenges and the difficulties of it?
Going through litigation, I think, is a very stressful time. There's time, and the litigants can't control the amount of time that it takes to get the process. Whereas with mediation, the parties are in control how quickly they want to get it done. And it could be a matter of weeks to months. So it's up to them. We go at a pace that they're comfortable with. With litigation, the parties have no control truly over how much money is being spent. Those billable hours start adding up when you call your attorney to check in what's going on, you're getting charged for it. So that's a big stressor, because the pot of money typically in the average American household it's finite, and it supported one household. It now has to be split to support two households in most cases. And so what that means is $20,000 can be spent somewhere else, in most cases. And when you know that you're spending that kind of money on the divorce, I think it's very stressful for the parties. I think that the fear of the judge imposing a decision that could affect the parties' lives for years to come is also very stressful and concerning. And when parties choose to mediate, they stay in control of that outcome. They get to decide rather than a judge. I think that when parties litigate, like we said, nobody gets what they want. And a lot of times these same parties end up back in court because, somebody's not abiding by the agreement or the order that the judge imposed. And research has demonstrated that when an individual takes part in crafting an agreement, they're more likely to abide by that agreement. So parties who mediate their divorce are also less likely to end up back in court.
Yeah.
And I think with litigation, I think I mentioned this before, the wounds, they become bigger and deeper in many cases, and they become really hard to heal from. So families don't function, even when they're restructuring, they don't function because of all of that animosity and the bitter battle. But when you mediate, you really lessen those. And many couples report improved communication post mediation. And that's
Absolutely.
really important in the cases of, co-parenting that has to continue to go on.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And so do you offer, I know your services are available everywhere in Florida, like there are 59 counties. It's a very, very, very geographically diverse state.
Yes.
Do you offer virtual services or are they in person? Like, how do you deliver the services?
We do. And, surprisingly, with the change that happened since this pandemic, most parties want to mediate virtually. It saves them time, it saves money. And I think the idea of not maybe having to face their partner in the same room, it kind of removes a stressor there in some cases. So yeah, most of it's virtual.
That's fantastic. And it's amazing to me. It's been amazing to watch over the years through the pandemic, many court services and related services going online, which is much more convenient for the average person to do. You can take, you can have a mediation session on your lunch hour, right? Rather than having to travel to a specific place. And so I think that is fantastic. Can you talk just very briefly about what the service entails? Like, what would the experience be like if someone were going through a divorce and found you either voluntarily or through court-ordered mediation? What's the experience like? How long does it take to get to a resolution and that sort of thing?
Well, with the pre-suit pro se mediation, I like to divide those up into separate sessions. And the first session, I want to just get to know the parties and is there anything that they've already agreed on? I want to get to know them and really uncover their values and what their true interests are. So we're not just taking positions and I want the house, I want, the boat. It's really about uncovering what's important to them. And then we set up, it can really vary depending on what the parties want. So if they want it done pretty quickly, then we move at a faster pace. But we usually have a session involving like the parenting plan, getting that written up. Then we want to look at the equitable distribution of assets. We may have a session devoted to like alimony and child support issues. And finally, anything else like maybe fine china or a piece of artwork, those sorts of things. But it's hard to say because it is so flexible. And that is one of the keys of mediation, is that there's so much flexibility with it. It's led by the principles of self-determination. So the parties get to choose. I don't impose any decisions. I have no power to do that, nor would I want to. That's not mediation. It's guiding the parties to help them come up with a solution to their issues. So it is so varied. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Fantastic. Fantastic. At the end of the process, then, do you typically lock it in with a court order of some kind? In other words, does the court get involved at the end of the process, or do folks just sign a contract and go on about their way?
So for a legal divorce, legal dissolution of marriage in Florida, you do have to file that with the court, and the court will approve that. But we mediate, and the parties can choose to file everything that they need to file on their own, or we sell packages where we will do the filings for them, and we file everything all at once. And then basically, they will get divorced, when it comes up on the court's calendar. So
there's a court order at the end of the day.
Parties, again, some choose to do it on their own, others choose not to. And something that I did not mention, there are sometimes complex issues. And what we do recommend is that parties consult with an attorney. So they don't retain an attorney to represent them, but there are many attorneys out there who are mediation friendly. I can make referrals. I let parties choose. I give them a number of options so that they can choose. But there are definitely attorneys out there who will tell them, this is what the law says, because I cannot, as a mediator, provide legal advice. We also sometimes recommend that they meet with financial experts when there are, some complex financial issues to be decided
Absolutely.
upon.
Absolutely. I think this subject is so fascinating for so many people. One of the biggest concerns from the courts is the number of self-represented people in the courts. And that happens more frequently than any other court in family court. It's folks in family court, and so it's very great to have these sorts of alternative dispute resolution techniques available for them. Do you have a sense? I know that average litigation for a divorce is about $20,000. What is the range of prices for mediation, for getting this resolved out of court, particularly when they reach you before litigation begins?
So doing it differently, divorce, I can speak to literally a fraction of that 20,000 for a package of 10 hours. So that usually covers, we can divide those up into different sessions, like I mentioned, according to what the parties want. That's going to be right around $2,000. So that's 10 hours. That includes a marital settlement agreement, a parenting plan, anything that the parties need to be able to file with the court. If they feel like they have a number of issues that are already resolved, literally do it for about half that price, 5-hour package. So the rates that you'll pay for a mediator vary, but think about it. You're not paying for two separate attorneys. You're paying for one mediator, and it's definitely cost effective. It probably is the most cost effective way to resolve a divorce in the United States.
No doubt about it. That's fantastic. Unfortunately, I know that we at Courtroom 5 see lots of family law cases that are actively being litigated. And so I would much rather see people being able to handle these things out of court, because I know how difficult the situation is for them. All right, thank you so much. I do want to just share with our readers your website there. It's Doing It Differently Divorce at doingitdifferentlydivorce.com. Where else can folks find you online?
They can find us on Instagram and Facebook. And I can't tell you offhand, sadly, what the handles are for that. But there should be something on the website that would connect them.
Absolutely. And we'll certainly include that information in the show notes. Laura, thanks so much for the work that you do and for sharing your knowledge about the mediation process with our viewers. Thanks so much. And we'll have you on again.
Thank you, ladies. It was a pleasure.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Learning a lot about the mediation space and just ways for people to stay out of court. I mean, as much as I value the things we do at Courtroom 5 and certainly want to provide assistance any way we can, litigation is not for the meek, that's for sure. And so if there are ways to handle your disputes out of court, you certainly want to explore those ways. So glad to know that there are services like this available. Deborah, you want to take us home today?
Sure. Today's quiz, it's a little bit long. When Ethel's mother died, she left her $1 million home and most of her monetary assets to Ethel's sister, Marge, who was her mother's caretaker. Ethel sued to contest the will on the grounds of undue influence. Ethel's niece, Courtney, is listed on Marge's witness list, and Ethel wants to bar Courtney's testimony because she believes it will be prejudicial and harmful to her case. What might be a good document for her to file? A good document for her to file is a motion in limine. A motion in limine essentially, if you get it, bars a particular testimony or evidence from being introduced before a judge or before a jury. And so that is the motion to eliminate, and that is what Ethel should do. All right.
That's fantastic. I can't tell you how many times I mispronounced that term. Yeah, absolutely. So I think I finally had a judge correct me, but I already screwed it up so many times. So that's great. Good to know, and good to hear it pronounced correctly. Fantastic. That's all we have for you today. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Are you feeling beleaguered, angry, or afraid, as if things are spinning out of control and you're powerless to stop them? It's easy to just let things slide and hope they don't get worse. But they often do get worse. The thing is, you're not powerless. Our courts belong to us, and their purpose is to give power to the powerless. Don't let your grievances pile up without redressing them. You can handle this in court. Or, if someone takes you to court, you can take them to school.